I used to have a name that meant something. Now it's just a signature at the bottom of a fading memory. People call me Miles Harrington, or maybe they don't. I don't hear many voices anymore that answer back. The world has thinned the living down to whispers and shadows, and most of those are gone. Families, cities, governments, they're all gone, or at least they've become ghosts in this broken landscape. I am, at best, a voice in the static, a crackling frequency on a battered radio, hoping someone is listening. Some days I feel like the last human, and I imagine the listener out there, if there is one, hearing me through the interference, feeling the tremor in my words, the desperation I try to cloak behind calm tones. But I know they would hear it anyway. They always do. Desperation can't be hidden. Survival is a rhythm now, and I have learned it by heart. My day begins before the sun, or whatever passes for a sun these days, has the strength to burn through the red haze. I check the water filters first. A scavenged, jury-rigged system of ceramic and sand that keeps the river grime out of our bellies. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Water is the hardest thing to come by these days. I walk for hours to reach a patch of river that isn't choked with silt or toxic runoff. I know its bends and eddies, the smell of algae before it turns sour, the subtle hum of insects that have managed to survive the collapse. Food is harder. Canned goods are a memory as rare as a safe street. I hunt small animals, trap what I can, and forage for plants I recognize or think I recognize. Mistakes are expensive. I've seen the sickened, the poisoned, the dead, all because someone assumed they knew what they were eating. I cook over fires that smell of smoke and ash, and sometimes I wish I could remember the smell of bread baking, the way heat from an oven used to warm a home. Shelter is a daily negotiation. I've barricaded myself in a half-collapsed warehouse outside what used to be a suburban town. The walls are scarred with rust and graffiti from survivors long gone, a patchwork of warnings, names, and crude maps. I reinforce the windows with salvaged metal, listen for footsteps in the hollow corridors, and pray the wind doesn't pick up the old roof like paper. Some nights I dream that it does. Some nights I wake to find my shelter shaken, half a wall missing, and I know I will rebuild it again because that's all I can do. I am not alone in this, though it often feels that way. I have companions of a sort, the static on the radio, the echo of voices I've recorded in the past, the faint scratching of rats in the corner, the occasional appearance of another survivor who trusts me enough to speak. Trust is a currency more valuable than water, more valuable than food, more valuable than the sun that doesn't shine. And it is rare. I have given it. I have been betrayed. I have learned to be careful, but not so careful that I become a ghost myself. I keep this radio station running because I have to. Not for me, but for anyone still out there. A voice can guide, warn, even comfort. I know the sound of hope is fragile, because I've lived the silence when hope was absent. I've survived days where the sky burned orange and the winds tore the last remaining crops from the soil. I've survived nights where the temperature dropped so low that frost formed on the walls inside my shelter. And in all of it I spoke, to nothing, to anyone. And sometimes that is enough to survive another day. My past clings to me like a shadow I can't shake. I once had a family, a home filled with warmth and routine. I remember my daughter's laughter echoing through the kitchen, my wife's hands brushing flour from my sleeves. That world is gone. The fire came fast, the waters rose faster, and we were torn apart. I survived when they didn't, or perhaps they survived somewhere I cannot reach. It doesn't matter. The grief is a companion now, a cold weight I carry alongside my pack of supplies. Every memory is both a dagger and a compass, reminding me why I move forward and why I cannot stop. Responsibility drives me now, though not in the way it did before. I am responsible for my own survival first, but second, I am responsible for any trace of humanity I can nurture. A message in the static, a warning to avoid poisoned water, directions to a shelter that still holds. Sometimes it feels futile. But then I remember the faces of those I've helped, those who found a fresh water source because of a broadcast I made, those who escaped a raider's trap because of a warning whispered over the airwaves. Small victories, but victories nonetheless. I keep a journal too, though paper is a rare commodity. Mostly, it's scraps of paper and smudged pencil marks, notes to myself, maps, recordings of weather patterns and observations of the world. I catalog what I see: temperature swings, animal migrations, soil conditions. It is my attempt to understand a world that no longer makes sense. Science is a kind of faith now, a thread I cling to, the only thing that feels consistent in an inconsistent world. I am not invincible. Fear shadows me constantly. Fear of storms, of betrayal, of starvation, of the silence that might signal the end. But I cannot afford panic. Panic is a luxury the dead can afford. I move with calculation, with caution, and with a stubborn streak that refuses to surrender. Each step, each breath is deliberate. I have learned the value of slow survival, of patient endurance. There are moments when I almost give in to despair. Nights where the radio picks up only static, and the wind moans like a chorus of lost souls. Days when my legs feel like lead and the horizon offers nothing but dust. Yet even then, I speak into the microphone because speaking is living. It is defiance. It is proof that even in this shattered world I exist, and I refuse to disappear quietly. Hope is a fragile ember, but it is all I have left. The thought that somewhere, someone might hear me keeps me moving. That thought fuels every step through ash-choked streets, every night spent barricaded in a collapsing warehouse, every scavenged meal that tastes of dust and grit. It is not much, but it is enough. Enough to survive today, enough to fight for tomorrow. I am Miles Harrington, and I am still here. I carry the memory of the world that was, the weight of the world that is, and the faintest possibility of a world that might yet be. Every day I navigate the ruins. Every day I speak into the void. And every day I hope that somewhere someone listens. Because as long as someone hears me, humanity is not entirely lost. The crisis didn't arrive suddenly. It crept in like a shadow across the land, stretching longer each season, each year, until it became the only reality we know. The world's arteries, the rivers, the streams, the veins of rain that once carried life, have all but dried. The Missouri River, once a lifeblood running silver through the heart of the continent, is now nothing but cracked, blistered earth. The riverbed stretches like a scar across the plains, and the fish are gone, leaving only mud and the occasional, desperate scavenger searching for something edible. For 3 years, the sky has refused to open. Not a single drop has fallen that could quench the thirst of the land. Heat waves arrive in waves of their own, like invisible walls pressing down on the landscape, baking the soil into dust and warping the pavement of roads that haven't been maintained since the collapse. Temperatures swing unpredictably. The morning may feel like winter, only for the afternoon sun to strike with the heat of a furnace. Nighttime offers no relief, just a brittle, cold darkness that seeps through clothes and bones alike. Survival is a calculus now. Every day is an equation where resources and risk must balance perfectly, or you don't make it. Food is scarce. Cans of pre-collapse provisions have long since vanished. Small animals have either migrated, died, or gone feral. Plants grow stunted, their leaves shriveled and bitter. I forage when I can, but every edible find is a gamble. One wrong mushroom, one misidentified root, and you gamble more than your health. You gamble your life. Water is the true enemy. Wells have gone dry or poisoned. Rivers and lakes are contaminated with runoff, dead fish, and industrial waste. We collect rain when we can, but even that is rare now, falling only as brief, acidic bursts that do more damage than good. I carry purification tablets, a makeshift charcoal filter, and an intimate knowledge of what's safe to drink, but I never trust a single drop completely. I've learned to ration water not by thirst, but by the number of hours you might need to survive without it. The weather itself has turned violent in ways that defy the old rules. Tornadoes form overnight in places that never knew such storms. Hurricanes spin inland, carrying walls of rain and wind that strip houses to their foundations and rip survivors from their fragile shelters. Dust storms roll across the plains like rivers of sand, erasing roads, burying buildings, choking lungs, and leaving nothing but silence in their wake. Lightning strikes ignite fires in forests already burned bare, feeding infernos that roar for miles. It's not just nature against us, it's other humans. Some survive by scavenging, some by killing, some by both. Raiders patrol the roads, moving in silence and shadows, their weapons scavenged from a world that once belonged to law and order. Their eyes are cautious, but once they see weakness, there's no mercy. Trust is a risk you can't always afford. Even those who appear as allies may betray you if the need for food, fuel, or water outweighs their loyalty. I've encountered both types of survivors. There's a woman named Clara who has made her home in the shell of an abandoned farmhouse several miles north. She shares knowledge of water sources and food caches, and sometimes we trade small items we've scavenged: salt, battery cells, even old books. She has her own ghosts, and I have mine, but in fleeting moments, humanity flickers. Then there are others, shadowy figures who lurk and wait, measuring your supplies, your habits, your fatigue, and they strike when you are weakest. Fuel is another resource slipping through our fingers. Gasoline is a memory. Diesel is rarer than gold. Generators run on what we scavenge, on what we cannibalize from abandoned vehicles, and even then they cough and sputter before failing entirely. Every day I ration the generator's hours because the radio signal, the fragile thread connecting me to anyone else, is my lifeline, and without it, the world is a silent tomb. The environment itself is in revolt. Soil erosion has stripped fertile lands of nutrients. Crops fail season after season. Forests, burned and scarred, cannot regrow quickly enough. Species vanish with alarming frequency, creating domino effects we may not fully understand until too late. The air carries particles that sting the eyes and throat. I wear a makeshift mask when I travel through open stretches, but the dust finds a way inside anyway. Scientific observation is my weapon against the chaos. I record temperatures daily, track precipitation, or the absence of it, and watch patterns forming in storms. Atmospheric readings show a relentless warming trend. Polar ice sheets have melted faster than predicted, shifting ocean currents and destabilizing the jet stream. Tornadoes, hurricanes, and dust storms are becoming more frequent and more violent because the planet itself has shifted. Drought has become endemic. The hydrological cycle has been broken. Rivers, aquifers, rain, all of it unreliable now. Even the wind behaves unpredictably, sometimes roaring in unnatural bursts, sometimes stagnating until the air is thick and suffocating. Every day, survival becomes harder. Simple tasks, walking to a water source, scavenging for food, maintaining shelter, have become treacherous exercises. You must calculate distance, timing, temperature, wind patterns, and potential encounters with other humans. One mistake can cost you hours of life or more. I carry a knife, a pistol, and a battered pack of scavenged items. Every tool has a story and a purpose. I know how to start fires without matches, purify water without tablets, and navigate by stars, or what remains of them. But all of it is finite. All of it could fail. There is no safety in numbers either. Groups of survivors may seem protective, but hunger and fear twist morality. I've seen allies turn on one another in moments of desperation. Once, I witnessed a small group split apart over the last remaining clean water from a rain collection system. They fought silently at first, then screams carried across the open plains. I stepped back, silent and hidden, and survived that day only because I moved when they were distracted. The crisis is not just physical, it's psychological. Fear, anxiety, despair, they gnaw at the edges of your mind. You dream of water and food, of voices, of a sun that warms rather than scorches. You wake to dust in your mouth and the wind in your ears, wondering if the horizon offers relief or death. I've watched men and women succumb to panic, wander into storms, or wander too far from shelter. Some never return. Others return changed, silent, eyes hollow. Even my radio broadcasts carry the tension. I report weather shifts, relay survival tips, and warn of hazards. I explain why the river has dried, why the soil is failing, why the storms rage. Science is my tool and my shield. I describe temperature anomalies, atmospheric pressure readings, chemical contamination in water sources, the direction of winds carrying dust and debris. I talk about food preservation, water purification, and tracking animal patterns for hunting. Every detail I share is a thread of life, because information may save someone else the way knowledge has saved me. But the world moves faster than I can track. Storms develop in hours instead of days. Fires spread with unnatural intensity. Supply caches I map one morning are gone by afternoon, raided or destroyed. Roads that were safe yesterday are impassable today. The rules have changed, and everyday survival is a new negotiation with chance, climate, and humanity itself. I'm acutely aware of the limitations. Water supplies that last barely 3 days, food that must be rationed with military precision, fuel that powers only the essential systems, and knowledge that only stretches so far before the next disaster reshapes everything. My shelter is strong but finite. My tools are effective but worn. My body is resilient but human. And still, I endure because endurance is all we have. The crisis is relentless. It is everywhere, visible in the cracked earth, the charred forests, the poisoned rivers, and the eyes of the survivors I encounter. It is invisible in the wind patterns, the atmospheric anomalies, and the slowly dying soil beneath our feet. The line between survival and extinction is thinner than ever. And as I prepare for another day, another scavenging run, another storm to face, another encounter with the desperate, I know that the world has no mercy. Yet I move forward. I track the clouds, the winds, the broken rivers. I map what remains of safe passage. I speak into the radio, hoping that the words, the science, the warnings might reach someone else. Because even amid this escalating chaos, even amid the desperation and death, there is a spark that refuses to die. Hope, information, survival. They are my weapons against the storm, and they are all I have. The air is thick with dust, choking every breath I take. It sticks to my tongue, coats my throat, and settles in my lungs like sand in a storm. Every step I take feels heavier than the last, and yet I move forward because I have to. There is no pause in survival, no rest for the weary, and certainly no time for despair. Not yet. Not when the world still whispers promises that might be true. The last ration of water sits in a dented metal canister at my feet. Enough for 2 days if I drink sparingly, enough for 1 day if I let hope betray me. Food is almost gone. A few scavenged cans, some dried roots, and a handful of small game that I trapped yesterday. Fuel is lower than it's been since I began this broadcast, just enough to keep the generator alive for another day, and that generator is my lifeline to anyone else who still listens. Without it, I am silent. Without it, the world forgets me. I am not alone in this. The landscape itself has become a predator. The winds have shifted overnight, carrying dust from miles away, obscuring landmarks I've relied on for months. The skies are now an angry shade of violet, the sun filtered through a haze of ash and pollution. The temperature swings violently. Morning promises a fragile warmth, but by noon it scorches my skin, and by evening it freezes my hands through worn gloves. Every step outside the shelter is a negotiation with death, and every mile carries the risk of hunger, thirst, or exposure. But nature is not the only threat. Raiders are everywhere now, moving like shadows in the remains of cities, their eyes sharp, their intentions sharper. I've encountered them before, silent figures with weapons scavenged from the old world, faces masked, hands steady. They take what they want, leave the rest to rot. Trust is a dangerous commodity, and yet necessity sometimes forces it. Supplies are too scarce to move alone, and alliances, even fragile, tenuous ones, can buy you hours of life. Today, I encountered a small group on the outskirts of what used to be a suburban town. They were cautious at first, watching me from the roof of a burned-out pharmacy. I could see their tension mirrored my own. Hunger, thirst, fear. It's all written across every human face these days. I raised my hands in peace, showing them I carried nothing dangerous, nothing they could steal. But peace is fragile, and caution is sharper than any blade. They watched me, calculating whether my presence was an opportunity or a threat. Then the story began. Rumors. Whispers of water, real water, flowing somewhere beyond the wasteland, a place untouched by drought, untouched by dust. A community that had survived not through luck but through knowledge, through technology we have all but forgotten. My heart clenched at the thought, a spark I hadn't allowed myself to feel in weeks. Hope is dangerous, but it is also the only thing that keeps the legs moving, keeps the hands steady, keeps the voice alive on the radio. I don't know if the story is true. Perhaps it's another lie to lure desperate travelers into traps, another cruel trick played by those who survived by preying on hope. And yet, I cannot ignore it. The map they sketch from memory is crude, incomplete, but it points to a direction, a possibility. For the first time in days, I feel a pull stronger than fear, a purpose that extends beyond mere survival. Still, resources are failing faster than ever. The last cache of canned goods has dwindled to emptiness. Traps yield little, small animals too wary or too few to sustain me. I ration water down to a cup at a time, measuring each sip like a scientist measuring an unstable reaction. The generator sputters, a warning that the fuel will not last much longer. And every night the wind carries the echoes of distant storms, reminding me that the environment itself is conspiring against us. I decide to move, slowly, methodically. Each step is deliberate, each movement calculated. The terrain is treacherous. Buildings once sturdy now lean precariously, their foundations eaten away by floods, drought, and neglect. Streets are fractured, highways split, and bridges collapsed into rivers that no longer run. I navigate using memory, intuition, and scraps of maps I've salvaged from abandoned shelters. Every mile is a gamble with survival, every mile a negotiation with the unknown. Encounters with others continue to shape my journey. Some offer assistance, a shared ration, a hint about where the rumor of water might be true. Others watch silently, their motives hidden beneath masks, their eyes scanning for weakness. I've learned to read these signs, the slight twitch, the hand hovering over a weapon, the way a voice carries tension even when it speaks softly. Trust is partial and conditional. I must always assume danger until proven otherwise. And then there are the storms. One rises faster than expected, a rolling wall of purple clouds, swirling with dust, ash, and debris. It moves inland at impossible speed, and I know that shelter will not be enough. I duck into the shell of a collapsed gas station, barricading the door with scavenged wood and metal. The storm hits with a roar that shakes the walls, a ferocity that seems almost sentient. Lightning strikes somewhere close enough to ignite fires, and I can smell the acrid tang of burning plastic carried on the wind. During the storm, I think about the people who might be listening to this broadcast. If they hear me, what should they do? Stay put. Move. Seek shelter in the open. I describe everything I know, the pattern of the wind, the signs that the storm is rotating toward the north, the likely paths of flooding, and how to protect the body from debris. I speak not just to survive, but to instruct, to share knowledge that might save another life. Knowledge is the only weapon left that cannot be taken away. Once the storm passes, I emerge to find the world altered yet again. Debris is scattered, streets are reshaped, and the landmarks I relied on are obscured or destroyed. Nature reshapes the land overnight now, leaving no safe path for travel. The rumor of the water source grows more tantalizing with each obstacle, each hardship endured. It is a mystery, a promise, a siren call across the wasteland. Internal struggle gnaws at me. Should I follow it? The story could be true, or it could be a trap, another cruel trick designed by the desperate to lure the hopeful into danger. but hope itself is addictive. I weigh it against the known dangers. Dwindling supplies, the unpredictability of the weather, the shadows of raiders hidden behind crumbling walls. Every decision is a gamble, every step a negotiation with fate. The tension escalates further when I stumble across a makeshift camp. Signs of life are everywhere: ashes from a fire, a partially eaten rodent, footprints pressed into the dust. The occupants are gone, but the trail leads north, coinciding with the rumor of water. My pulse quickens. Should I follow the trail or stay hidden? Hunger and thirst push me forward. Fear pulls me back. I pause, recording my thoughts for the radio, knowing that even if no one hears me, writing my decisions down steadies my mind. Night falls, but the darkness is punctuated by strange lights on the horizon. Flares, fires, or perhaps the campfires of other survivors, moving as silently and cautiously as I do. I cannot tell. The uncertainty is unbearable, yet it fuels my drive. I know that at this pace, resources will run out entirely. Every choice now carries weight, consequence, and risk. The line between survival and death is thinner than ever. In this rising tension, the world is alive and hostile. Storms, dust, scarcity, and humans all converge into an inescapable maze. Every mile I traverse, every shadow I pass, every whisper of rumor carries both danger and the faintest glimmer of hope. I am learning to trust the smallest signs, the shape of a leaf pointing to water, the tracks of animals, the faint sound of moving water in the distance. The myth of the water source becomes a beacon. It could be real, it could be fantasy. Yet in this world, even a fantasy that drives you forward is better than stagnation, better than despair. I follow the signs, the rumors, the whispers, because forward is the only direction that offers survival. And so I move north, my pack lighter, my steps cautious, my heart pounding in time with the wind and dust. Raiders may watch, storms may strike, and resources may fail me. But the promise of water, of life, of something beyond mere survival, drives me forward. Because even in a world where every compass spins wildly, some direction still exists, and I intend to find it. The horizon had darkened in a way that made my stomach knot. Not the violet haze of dust I had grown accustomed to, but a wall of shadow rolling over the land, low and dense, stretching across the plains like an impossible mountain. The wind had shifted again, carrying with it the stench of smoke and ash, but also a faint, wet smell that made my throat tighten. Rain, or something close to it. I was close, so close that my heart threatened to betray me with its thudding. The rumors had been right, at least in part. I had followed the footprints, the faint trickle of water in hidden streams, the signs that life could still exist beyond the wasteland. And now I could see it, or hear it rather, the rushing of water that hadn't touched the world in years. Somewhere ahead, hidden by the remnants of a fractured forest, was a spring, a stream, maybe even a small reservoir. Life. But nature wasn't done testing me. The storm was moving faster than I anticipated. Clouds roiled, thick with ash and dust, and lightning forked across the sky in jagged, silent bursts. The air vibrated with a pressure that pressed down on my chest. I could feel it in my bones. Every instinct screamed to turn back, to find shelter, to survive another day. And yet I moved forward. The water was close. I could taste it, feel it calling me. The path was treacherous. Trees, weakened by fire and drought, had fallen across what little trail remained. I scrambled over roots and through thorned undergrowth, cutting my hands and arms on the sharp edges. My pack snagged on branches, spilling some of my supplies, and I had to decide. Go back and recover them, losing precious time, or press on toward the promise of life. Survival demanded the latter. I left the scattered cans and scraps behind, each one a small sacrifice to the gods of chance. Then a sound, a crackling, a movement just beyond my line of sight. Another survivor, raiders. The mind conjures threats in these moments, and I assume them all to be real. I crouched behind a broken wall, heart racing, listening. A figure emerged from the shadow of a burned-out shed. Not a raider, not hostile. A woman, ragged, carrying a makeshift spear. She froze when she saw me, eyes wide, calculating. "Who are you?" she called out, voice cautious but trembling. "Miles," I said, hands raised. "I'm not here to hurt you. Just looking for water." She nodded slowly, lowering her spear but keeping it ready. "You're not the only one." We moved together now, two figures threading through the chaos of the wasteland, both wary, both desperate. She introduced herself as Clara, though I had heard the name before from scattered rumors. Others had spoken of her, the one who had found a cache of clean water months ago, the one who had managed to help a handful of survivors without succumbing to the chaos. She had knowledge I lacked, and I had the endurance that kept me moving when hope faltered. Together, we were stronger, but not invincible. The water came into view, a small pool hidden beneath the shelter of a collapsed ridge. It shimmered faintly in the dim light, pristine compared to the brown sludge I had been drinking for months. My hands trembled as I knelt beside it, cupping the cool liquid and letting it trickle into my mouth. The taste was alien, sweet, alive. I drank greedily, every sip a small resurrection. Clara did the same, and we shared a brief, silent acknowledgement of survival. But the storm was not yet finished. The air shifted violently, the pressure dropping suddenly as the first sheets of acid rain began to fall. I barely had time to pull a tarp from my pack to shield us. The raindrops hissed as they struck the ground, carrying with them the scent of chemicals burned into the atmosphere. One wrong step and the soil itself could betray us, slick with runoff, unstable from erosion. I could feel the tension in Clara as she crouched beside me, scanning the horizon, every muscle taut. Then came a choice that would define the next hours of my life. The ridge behind us began to collapse under the pounding rain. A portion of the earth shifted, sending rocks tumbling toward us. We could stay, risking the ridge crumbling entirely, or move forward deeper into uncharted territory, toward the source of the water but also into the unknown. I hesitated, heart in my throat. The storm was merciless, but the water, this living, breathing promise, was more than I had dared hope for. To turn back was to surrender everything I had struggled for. To move forward was to risk death, exposure, and exhaustion. I chose to move forward. Clara followed without question, trust forged in desperation. The terrain became a gauntlet. Fallen trees, jagged rocks, and pools of contaminated water we had to navigate without touching. The rain intensified, stinging our skin, and thunder rolled like a drumbeat of doom. Lightning struck nearby, igniting a small blaze in the dry undergrowth. We sprinted past it, our boots slipping in mud, lungs burning, hearts hammering against ribs that felt too fragile for such exertion. And then we saw it. A structure, partially buried in earth, metal corroded but intact. A pump powered by a solar array that still glimmered faintly through the storm clouds. The water was flowing continuously, clean and abundant. A sanctuary, a small miracle amidst the ruin. I fell to my knees beside the pump, cupping water into my mouth, letting it soak into every fiber of exhaustion. Clara did the same. Words failed us. Only survival and relief spoke in that moment, but there was no time to savor the triumph. The storm hit fully, a wall of wind and rain that threatened to sweep us from the earth entirely. Trees groaned and snapped, the ground churned into mud, and I realized that staying, even beside this miraculous source, might kill us. I had to make another choice. Secure the pump and risk my life in the storm, or retreat to safer ground and leave the water untended. I chose the pump. Every second mattered. I secured the valve, stabilized the structure with scavenged supports, and ensured that the solar panels continued to gather what little light remained. Clara and I worked in unison, drenched, muscles screaming, lungs heaving. The storm was relentless, but human will proved stronger. By the time it passed, the water flowed, the pump stood, and we were alive, trembling and soaked but alive. As the clouds began to part, I reflected on everything that had brought me here. The losses, the betrayals, the nights of empty stomachs and dusty water, the countless decisions that had wavered between life and death, and yet I had survived. Clara had survived, and the water, the literal lifeblood of hope, remained. It was more than survival. It was a test of endurance, trust, and the stubborn insistence that life, even in its smallest form, mattered. I had come to this turning point not because the world had been kind, but because I refused to be defeated. Every mile, every rationed sip, every cautious step, every broadcast into the static, it had led here. For a brief moment, as the storm faded and the first glimmers of light touched the wet earth, I allowed myself to feel something long buried beneath layers of dust, fear, and loss. Triumph, not over the world which remained hostile and uncertain, but over despair, over the crushing weight of inevitability, over the endless struggle that had defined me for months. Clara looked at me, her eyes reflecting the faint sun, the glint of water, and a silent acknowledgement that we had found something that mattered, something worth the risk. "We made it," she whispered, voice trembling. I nodded, unable to find words, because words felt insufficient against the magnitude of survival, against the fragile, quivering spark of hope we had unearthed together. In that moment, I realized the truth of everything I had endured. Survival is not measured by the days you endure, but by the moments when you choose to act, to trust, to push forward despite fear. The turning point was not just the discovery of water. It was the decision to move, to believe, to risk everything on the fragile possibility that life could persist, that hope could endure even when every compass spun wildly. And as I speak into the radio now, broadcasting this moment to anyone still listening, I know that the story does not end here. The storm will return. Resources will continue to dwindle. Raiders will still hunt. But for the first time in months, I have proof that the world still holds pockets of life, that human can carve out spaces of survival even in the most hostile landscapes. The water flows. We survived the storm. And for today, that is enough. The storm has passed. At least I think it has. The clouds have thinned, leaving streaks of weak sunlight that struggle through the dust and ash lingering in the air. The wind has calmed, though it still carries the metallic scent of rain laced with chemicals and the earthy tang of displaced soil. Every step I take is cautious, my boots sinking slightly in the softened mud. Around me, the world feels alien, yet strangely alive. The pump still hums faintly, its water flowing steadily, a heartbeat in the broken land. I kneel beside it, cupping water in my hands and letting it trickle into my mouth. It tastes sweet and clean, a rare gift in a world that has grown bitter. Clara stands beside me, scanning the horizon with wary eyes. There is relief etched into her features, though her body still trembles from the adrenaline of the storm. For a moment we simply breathe, letting the quiet wrap around us like a fragile blanket. We made it. Against all odds, against the dust, the heat, the raiders, and the storm itself, we made it. But the victory is quiet, almost subdued. Survival here is never triumphant in the way stories used to promise. There is no celebration, no applause, only the hum of flowing water and the realization that life is continuing, fragile and unsteady. As I refill my canisters, I reflect on everything that led to this moment. Months of dust-choked days, nights spent listening to the radio and hoping someone else was alive, scavenging through ruins that once held entire communities, fleeing from those who saw desperation as opportunity. All of it has brought me here. Every decision, every risk, every act of trust or caution has shaped this narrow corridor of survival. The water is more than sustenance. It is proof that effort, resilience, and hope are not meaningless. Clara and I work to stabilize the area around the pump. We reinforce the collapsed ridge, create channels to direct water flow safely, and set up a small makeshift shelter. It is rudimentary, barely more than tarps and salvaged metal, but it is enough for now. Enough to survive another day, another week. The storm has altered the landscape again. Fallen trees, mudslides, and debris make navigation treacherous, but our focus is singular, to hold on to what we have fought for. As we settle into the shelter, I notice small signs of life returning, or perhaps just persisting stubbornly. Birds, hesitant and dusty, flit between the skeletal trees. A small patch of green has survived the storm's fury, clinging to the cracked earth near the ridge. Life, in its quietest and most tenacious form, exists still. I wonder if it always did, if it simply waited for someone to notice, to nurture it, to believe it could endure. I speak into the radio, my voice low but steady. If anyone is out there, if you can hear this, there is water here, enough to survive. Follow the signs, take caution, but keep moving. Life is possible. I pause, listening to the static, hoping for a response that may never come. Even if no one hears me, the act of broadcasting feels necessary. It is a declaration, a tether to the world beyond this ridge. It is proof that I have not given up, that the world, broken though it may be, is not yet silent. Clara and I sit together as night falls, the rain having softened into a gentle drizzle that glistens on the leaves and mud. For the first time in weeks, perhaps months, I allow myself to feel something resembling calm. Not happiness, it feels too fleeting, but a fragile sense of order, a temporary truce with a world that has been relentless in its cruelty. The fireflies begin to flicker, tiny points of light against the darkness, and I marvel at how something so small can feel monumental. My thoughts drift back to the choices I have made. I remember the crossroads, the decision to follow the rumor of water, the choice to trust Clara, the act of securing the pump in the midst of a storm. Each one carried the weight of potential death, yet each one also carried the possibility of survival. I realize now that survival is never about certainty. It is about action, about embracing the fragility of hope and moving forward despite the odds. The landscape around us is still scarred. Fallen trees block paths we may need to travel, mudslides have shifted familiar landmarks, and the scarred earth reflects the violence of recent months. Civilization, as it once existed, is gone. Governments, institutions, and the infrastructure of a world that took care of its people no longer exist. All that remains are pockets of survivors, fragments of memory, and a tenuous connection to the life that was. Yet even amid this devastation, the water flows. Even amid this chaos, we endure. I take a moment to reflect on Clara. In another life, she might have been someone I passed on the street, someone whose existence never intersected with mine. Here, she is a companion, a reminder that human connection can still survive alongside catastrophe. Trust is hard-won, fragile, and yet it persists. We talk quietly about what comes next, about rationing supplies, about mapping the area, about the possibility of finding others. Each plan is tentative, provisional, a recognition that the world can change in an instant. The night is long, filled with the sound of dripping water, distant thunder, and the occasional howl of animals that have adapted to the new reality. Sleep is uneasy, punctuated by dreams of dust storms, collapsed buildings, and the faces of those I have lost. But even in these restless moments, I carry a sense of purpose. Survival is not just about living. It is about witnessing, remembering, and preparing. The water we found is more than life. It is a beacon, a statement that some things, human resilience, hope, and the will to endure, cannot be extinguished. Morning comes with a muted sunrise, the light filtered through the remnants of the storm. The world is battered, wet, and fragile, but it is still here. The pump continues to hum, the water flows steadily, and for the first time I allow myself to believe that perhaps, just perhaps, the worst is not yet permanent. I look at Clara and see that same recognition mirrored in her eyes. We have survived. We have found a foothold. And in this fractured world, that is a victory in itself. I walk along the ridge, surveying the area. Signs of erosion, fallen trees, and destabilized soil remind me that this victory is provisional. The environment remains hostile, unpredictable, and unforgiving. Yet, small signs of recovery appear. Plants pushing through mud, insects returning to puddles, the tentative chirping of birds that survived the storm. Life, it seems, persists in ways both subtle and remarkable. Reflecting on my journey, I realize that survival has changed me. Fear is still present, but it no longer dominates. I have learned to read the land, to interpret the whispers of the wind, the subtle tracks of animals, the distant signs of other humans. Patience, observation, and adaptability are no longer just strategies, they are lifelines. I am no longer merely reacting to the world. I am engaging with it, understanding it, and, in small ways, shaping it. As the sun climbs higher, warming the wet earth, I speak again into the radio, a habit as much for myself as for anyone listening. We are here. We are alive. There is water. There is life. Move cautiously, help each other, and remember that even in the dust and storms, the world can still offer hope. The static answers, indifferent, but the act of speaking feels necessary. Words, like water, can carry life across desolation. Clara and I begin to plan. Not grand plans, not illusions of restoring what once was, but practical steps. Reinforcing the pump, rationing supplies, scouting the surrounding area, and marking safe paths. Each decision is deliberate, grounded in observation and knowledge, not hope alone. Yet hope, quiet, steady, and resilient, lingers at the edges of our actions. It is the force that pushes us forward, that reminds us why we endure. As I sit beside the flowing water, watching the first tentative signs of life return to the battered landscape, I understand something fundamental. The world is irreversibly changed. Dust, storms, scarcity, and human cruelty have left their mark. But survival is not about restoring what was lost. It is about finding what remains, nurturing it, and carrying it forward. In this understanding, I find a measure of peace. Not complete peace. There will always be storms, shortages, and threats, but a peace rooted in action, in resilience, and in the quiet assurance that, for now, life endures. The dust may return, storms may rage, and the compass may spin wildly once more. But in this moment I am here. Clara is here. The water flows, and in a world that has lost so much, that is enough. The sun is low now, sinking behind clouds that are streaked with smoke and ash. The sky isn't the blue I remember from childhood, but a dull, bruised orange that shifts toward gray as the light fades. Even so, it casts a gentle glow over the ridge where Clara and I have secured the water pump. I sit beside it, my hands resting on the cool metal, listening to the faint hum of water flowing, a sound that has become the heartbeat of our fragile existence. For months, I believed survival was a constant struggle against inevitability. Every day was a negotiation with a world that seemed intent on erasing us. Dust storms, scorched earth, acid rain, and human threats all made life precarious. Yet here I am, we are here, the storm passed, the water flows, hope persists in the smallest, most stubborn forms, and that is enough to keep breathing. I think back to the choices that brought me here. Following rumors, trusting Clara, risking the ridge in the midst of the storm, all decisions with consequences that could have ended me. And yet, each choice was an act of faith in something greater than fear. I learned that survival isn't just enduring, it's deciding, moving, acting, believing in the possibility of life even when every compass spins wildly and every instinct screams to turn back. Hope is fragile. I know that now better than ever. The pump could fail. Raiders could discover this place. Another storm could tear through this ridge and scatter everything we've built. The fragility of life here is constant, the balance delicate. But even fragile hope is still hope, and that is a force stronger than despair. It is a reminder that life does not need to be grand or certain to matter. It only needs to exist. Clara sits across from me, wrapped in a blanket she scavenged from a ruined home weeks ago. She smiles faintly, not at me, not at the world, but at the water flowing steadily before us. Her smile is small, but it is honest, and in it I see reflected the same quiet wonder I feel, that amid collapse, something enduring can be created. A moment of life, a pocket of stability, a place to rest and breathe. I speak into the radio once more, knowing that perhaps no one will hear me, or perhaps someone will catch the static and respond. If anyone is listening, I say, voice steady despite the ache in my throat, you are not alone. Survival is possible. Life is possible. Keep moving, keep searching, and take care of what you find. Every small victory matters. I pause, listening to the static hiss back at me, a reminder that connection is tenuous, but that attempting it is vital. Even if no one answers, the act of speaking is proof that life persists. Looking around, I notice the changes the storm has wrought. The ridge is battered but stable. The water flows, though the soil is eroded in places. Small plants are beginning to push through the mud, a tentative green against the monotony of brown and gray. Nature, it seems, can endure alongside human resilience, recovering slowly and quietly just as we do. It will take time, patience, and vigilance, but recovery of some kind is possible even in this fractured world. I reflect on what has changed within me. Fear is still there, a shadow at the edge of every step, but it no longer dictates my life. I have learned to balance caution with action, despair with hope, skepticism with trust. I have learned to read the land, to understand its whispers, to anticipate danger and opportunity alike. Survival has taught me to value moments as they come, to celebrate small victories, and to recognize that even the faintest glimmer of life is worth protecting. The world is not safe. It never will be, at least not in the way we once imagined. Civilization as we knew it is gone. Governments, infrastructure, and social order exist only as memory, but humanity, human will, remains. We endure, and that endurance, fragile as it may be, is a testament to the resilience of life. It is why we continue to fight, to scavenge, to trust cautiously, to build small refuges against the chaos. I stand and walk along the ridge, watching the water glint in the fading light. I see Clara tending the pump, adjusting a support, checking the flow, and I realize that our survival is not just physical, it is symbolic. This pump, this small source of life, is a statement. It says that even in a broken world, care, persistence, and cooperation can create something lasting. It says that small victories accumulate into meaning. It says that we, against all odds, are still here. Night falls fully, and the stars are dimmed by lingering haze, but I can see a few pinpricks of light. I allow myself to believe that somewhere, someone else might see these stars too, might hear the radio, might hold onto their own fragile hope. Survival is never guaranteed, but it is possible. And possibility is enough to keep walking forward, to keep tending the water, to keep speaking into the void. I sit again, beside the pump, reflecting on what the future holds. There will be more storms. There will be more dangers, human and natural alike. Food and fuel will remain scarce. Trust will continue to be a gamble, but now I know. The world may be broken, but life persists in defiance of despair. Every small action matters. Every decision shapes survival, and every glimmer of hope, no matter how tenuous, can be a lifeline. Clara looks at me, and I nod, a silent acknowledgement of the bond we share. We will continue together for now, but even if separated, we carry this moment of survival forward. The ridge, the water, the quiet triumph of endurance, it is ours, and it is proof that even the smallest victories matter. I speak one last time into the radio tonight. Stay alive, protect each other, find water, keep moving. Hope is fragile, but it exists, and that is enough. The static answers in kind, a cold, indifferent echo, but it does not matter. I have spoken the truth as I know it, and the act itself carries weight, a record of human will persisting against collapse. The night is quiet now. The water flows. The stars, faint and dim, remain above us. I do not know what tomorrow will bring, but for tonight, there is enough to continue, enough to fight for another sunrise, enough to keep believing that life, however fragile, can endure. The world may be lost in many ways, but we are still here. And as long as we are breathing, as long as water flows and hope exists, even in its smallest form, there is a reason to keep going, a reason to survive, a reason to trust in tomorrow, even if it is uncertain. I take a deep breath, letting the night air fill my lungs. I close my eyes briefly, listening to the water, the wind, the faint rustle of leaves. I open them again, and I see the ridge, the pump, Clara, the faint green of resilient life. I realize that survival is not a conclusion. It is a process, ongoing, unending, fragile, and necessary. And in that realization, I find peace. Not joy, not certainty, not victory in the way stories once promised, but something deeper. The knowledge that life persists. That hope, even small, even tenuous, matters. That the world may be harsh, unforgiving, and irreversibly changed, but as long as we endure, we can still write the story of survival. Stay alive. Stay human. Keep moving, keep searching, keep believing. The world is fractured, but we are still here.